if we want to talk about the American alliance against ISIS, it was only elusive alliance because ISIS was expanding during that operation. At the same time, that operation is illegal operation because it happened without consulting with or taking the permission of the Syrian government, which is a legitimate government, and it's a breaching of our sovereignty. Third, they didn't prevent any Syrian citizen from being killed by ISIS. The EU is supporting the terrorists in Syria from the very beginning under different titles, humanitarians, moderate, and so on. Actually, they were supporting al-Nusra and ISIS from the very beginning. They were extremists from the very beginning. So they cannot destroy and build at the same time. First of all, they have to take a very clear position regarding the sovereignty of Syria, stopping supporting the terrorists. This is where the Syrian would, I'll say would, accept those countries to play a role in that regard. But in the meantime, if you ask any Syrian about the same question, they will tell you, no, we don't accept. Those countries supported the people who destroyed our country. We don't want them to be here. Let me talk about the European political position in general. Many in this region believe that the European don't exist politically. They only follow the master, which is the American. So the question should be about the American, and European will follow and will implement what the American wants. They don't exist as independent states.
Do you see them as political allies?
No, because they're not my allies at all. The Belgian government, like many European governments, are blind today. They have no relation with this country on every level, so they're not my allies.
Who exactly is your enemy at this point?
My enemy is terrorism. It's about terrorism and support coming from abroad to support terrorists to destabilize Syria.
But it's not just the West that opposes you at this point. Saudi Arabia and Qatar, why are they so adamant about you resigning? And how would an unstable Middle East fit their agenda?
But the problem between Syria and many countries, whether in the Arab world or regional or in the West, and some countries, they believe that they can control Syria through orders or through money or petrodollars, and this is impossible in Syria. We had good relation with Iran since '79 till today, and it's getting better every day. But at the same time, we are moving toward the peace, and we had peace process, we had peace negotiations. Iran wasn't a factor against peace. So this is misinformation they try to promote in the West, that if we need peace, we don't have to have good relation with Iran. There's no relation. It's completely two different subjects. Iran supported Syria, supported our cause, the cause of the occupied land, and we have to support them in their cause. That's very simple. Iran is a very important country in the region. If we are looking for stability, we need good relation with Iran. You cannot talk about stability while you have bad relation with Iran, with Turkey, with your neighbors, and so on. This is it. They look to have their own, let's say, kingdom or emirat in their language. But mainly now they try to scare the people through explosion, assassination, suicide bombers, things like this, to push the people toward desperation and to accept them as a reality. So they go step by step, but their final aim is to have this, let's say, Islamic emirate in Syria, where they can promote their own ideology in the rest of the world.
Are you personally satisfied with the current negotiation format or mechanism?
We didn't forge this mechanism. It was forged by de Mistura and the UN with the influence of the country that wanted to use those negotiations in order to make pressure on Syria not to reach any resolution.
The Saudi-backed High Negotiation Committee, HNC, are saying that they are counting the Trump administration to play a positive role.
Each one represents different agenda. This time there was no negotiations in Geneva, and this is one of the reasons. That's why it didn't reach anything. The only thing that we discussed in Geneva was the agenda, the headlines. What are we going to discuss later? That's it. But how and which way you need to have two parallel way.
As we speak, top generals from Turkey, Russia, and the United States are meeting somewhere in Turkey to discuss tensions in northern Syria.
Yeah, if we want to link that meeting with ISIS in particular, we won't be objective, because at least one party, which is Turkey, has been supporting ISIS till this moment, because Erdogan, the Turkish president, is Muslim Brotherhood. He is ideologically linked and sympathetic with ISIS and with al-Nusra. And everybody knows about this in our region, and he helped them either through armament, logistically, through exporting oil. For the other party, which is the United States, at least during Obama administration, they dealt with ISIS by overlooking their smuggling the Syrian oil to Turkey. And this is how they can get money in order to recruit terrorists from around the world. While in Turkey, nothing has changed in that regard. ISIS in the north have the only one route of supply is through Turkey. And they're still alive, and they're still active, and they're still resisting different kind of raids and attacks. Because there's no link between Syria and the United States on the formal level. Even their raids against ISIS that happened without the cooperation or the consultation with the Syrian army or the Syrian government, which is illegal, as we always say. That talking about ISIS doesn't mean talking about the whole terrorism. ISIS is one of the products. Al-Nusra is another product. You have so many groups in Syria that they're not ISIS, but they are Al-Qaeda. They have the same background of the Wahhabi extremist ideology.
And now US troops are in Manbij.
Yeah.
Is the green light from your side? Did you open the door for these American troops?
No, we didn't. Any foreign troops coming to Syria without our invitation or consultation or permission, they are invaders, whether they are American, Turkish, or any other one. No, we don't. They didn't succeed anywhere they send troops. They only create mess. They are very good in creating problems and destroying, but they are very bad in finding solutions. Actually, the Western countries, especially the permanent members of the Security Council, they are trying to use the United Nations and the Security Council as a tool or mean in order to change regimes or government, to implement their agenda, not to restore stability, actually to create more instability around the world. And if they had the chance, they would change every government in the world, whether big country or small country, just when this government tried to be a little bit independent. Adding to that, the Western embargo in Syria has prevented Syria from having even the basic needs for livelihoods of any citizen in Syria. Let me be frank with you. When you talk about contribution in the operation against ISIS, actually there was no operation against ISIS. It was cosmetic operation. If you want to talk about the American alliance against ISIS, it was only elusive alliance because ISIS was expanding during that operation. At the same time, that operation is illegal operation because it happened without consulting with or taking the permission of the Syrian government, which is a legitimate government, and it's a breaching of our sovereignty. Third, they didn't prevent any Syrian citizen from being killed by ISIS. So what to be grateful for? To be frank, no. Because the EU is supporting the terrorists in Syria from the very beginning under different titles, humanitarians, moderate, and so on. Actually, they were supporting al-Nusra and ISIS from the very beginning. They were extremists from the very beginning. So they cannot destroy and build at the same time. First of all, they have to take a very clear position regarding the sovereignty of Syria, stopping supporting the terrorists. But in the meantime, if you ask any Syrian about the same question, he will tell you, no, we don't accept. Those countries supported the people who destroyed our country. We don't want them to be here. In this region believe that the European don't exist politically. They only follow the master, which is the American. So the question should be about the American, and European will follow and will implement what the American wants. They don't exist as independent states.
If you look back, do you think this war was avoidable?
No, because there was a bad intention regarding the different countries like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, France, UK, and the US in order to destabilize Syria. So it wasn't about the Syrians. That doesn't mean that we don't have many flaws before the war and today as a country that allow many of those countries to mess with our country. I'm not excluding, I'm not saying it's only about them, but they were the ones who took the initiative in order to run this war, so I don't think it was avoidable.
Do you see them as political allies?
No, because they're not my allies at all. In here who support those terrorists, and that's what I would like to raise as a question for the European official that went in the wrong way since the beginning of the crisis in Syria and led to the destruction of Syria and prevailing of terrorism in the region that led to terrorist attacks in many European countries and the refugee crisis. Now, if you want to talk about the European role or the Western role, because it's been led by the American, the only role is to support the terrorists till that moment. They didn't support any political process. They only talk about political process, but there's no real commitment to any political action till that moment. While if you talk about the role of Iran, it's completely different. They support Syria in fighting terrorists. They support Syria politically in the regional and international political arenas. Israel, from the other side, supporting directly the terrorists, whether logistically or through direct raids on our army in the neighboring area. Let's talk about the reality, about the facts. Since the Russians started their raids against ISIS in cooperation with the Syrian army, of course, after we asked them to come and support us in our fight against the terrorists, ISIS has been shrinking. Before that, there was what they called the American alliance or the Western alliance against ISIS, which is a cosmetic alliance. ISIS was expanding. So they started talking about the Russian role in that negative way only after they started succeeding on the ground. So regarding the political relation with the government, since the beginning of this, not only interventions, the support before sending their troops to Syria, I'm talking about the beginning of the war 6 years ago, since that time, every political step and later military step has been taken regarding the Syrian issue was in consultation with the Syrian government. This is their policy and this is their behavior. Their policy and their relation with Syria based on two things. First of all, the sovereignty of Syria, which is part of the Charter of the United Nations. I mean, the sovereignty of any country. Second one is on morals, based on moral. That's why there's no colonization. There's relations that go back to more than 6 decades between Syria and Russia, and it has always been like that in different circumstances. We should know that part of those killing was by the hand of the Europeans, not directly, but through supporting the terrorists from the very beginning and still calling them till that moment moderate. And they know that this is illusion. There are no moderate militants in Syria. All of them are extremists. And whether they are moderate or not, whenever you hold machine gun and armaments and kill people and destroy properties, you are terrorists. In your country, in my country, anywhere. Nobody can say that he is moderate killer or moderate terrorist. We don't have such a term. But the most important thing, if you want to talk about all what's happening, I think the same question should be asked to the Western official. Do they regret supporting the terrorists in Syria and calling them moderate? And when you have a war coming from outside and they use Syrian proxies, beside the foreigners, it's not enough to blame the others, to blame the West or the petrodollar state that support those terrorists. We all know about this. This culture, it's not about the politics, it's about the culture, it's about how some people would think. And unfortunately, this culture wasn't part of the original culture. It's something new that we've been seeing for the last few decades. Why? Because of the influence of the Wahhabi ideology that doesn't accept any other one. That doesn't mean it only influenced the religious people. This atmosphere of rejecting the other could influence everyone in the same society. If we don't deal with it seriously, it's going to prevail, and the whole society will not accept the other part of the society. And this is what you have is the fight between this mentality, mainly those extremist, Islamist, Wahhabi groups that's been fighting the rest of the society. But we have to deal with it seriously. It affected us, it affected the European society, and you see the result in your country now because you have the same focus, local focus, especially in France, when they isolated those people and they allowed the Wahhabi clerics to come and infiltrate their mind, and this is where you are paying the price.